The first time my brother looked at me in that courtroom, he didn't look surprised to see me. He looked annoyed, like I was an inconvenience, like I'd shown up to a party I hadn't been invited to, even though my name was the one printed on the invitation. The room smelled like old wood and disinfectant. Polished benches, scuffed floors, flags standing stiff in the corners like they'd heard every lie imaginable and stopped reacting years ago. My heels echoed too loudly as I walked in, each step announcing that I hadn't backed down, that I hadn't disappeared the way my family had expected me to. My brother was already seated at the front with his lawyer, expensive suit, perfect haircut, the same face that had always been praised at family dinners, the same voice that used to interrupt me mid-sentence like I was background noise. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and smirked when he saw me. That smirk took me straight back to childhood, to him taking the front seat while I climbed into the back without being asked, to teachers calling on him first, to my parents saying, "Your brother just has leadership energy," whenever he spoke over me. I sat down behind my attorney and folded my hands together so tightly my fingers hurt. This wasn't about old memories. This was about the fact that my brother believed my life belonged to him, and he wasn't subtle about it. The case had started quietly, too quietly. A letter from a law firm I didn't recognize, filled with formal language and passive aggression, claiming there were questions about my assets. The yacht, the penthouse, the company I'd built piece by piece while my family forgot my birthday 5 years in a row. At first I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw my brother's name. He wasn't questioning ownership. He was asserting it. The judge entered and everyone rose. Chairs scraped, papers shuffled. The moment felt unreal, like I was watching a movie where someone else's life was unraveling. "Be seated," the judge said. We sat. My brother's lawyer stood first. Smooth voice, confident, the kind of man who spoke like facts bent themselves to his tone. He talked about family assets, about implied entitlement, about sacrifices my parents had made, about how certain properties should rightfully revert to the family lineage. I noticed how carefully he avoided my name, like I was a technicality. Then my brother stood. He didn't need notes. He didn't look at the judge at first. He turned toward me instead, and smiled. I felt my stomach drop. He cleared his throat and said, loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear, "The yacht and the penthouse will be mine." A ripple moved through the room. A few heads turned. Someone inhaled sharply behind me. My lawyer started to rise, but the judge lifted a hand, curious now. My brother continued, warming to the sound of his own certainty. "They were acquired during a period where my sister was estranged from the family," he said, finally saying the word sister like it tasted strange. "She had no support system, no backing, which raises serious questions about how these assets were obtained and who they were meant for." Meant for. I stared at him, heart pounding, disbelief burning behind my eyes. He went on. "Our parents always intended for major investments to stay within the family. I was involved in discussions. Plans were made. Just because my sister chose to disappear doesn't mean she gets to rewrite that." Disappear. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and list every unanswered call, every ignored message, every holiday spent alone while they pretended I didn't exist. Instead, I stayed silent, because I knew something he didn't. The judge asked, calmly, "Ms., do you wish to respond now, or would you like your counsel to—" My brother cut in before I could breathe. "She doesn't need to. The evidence will speak for itself." He turned to me again, lower now, smug, almost kind. "You always needed help. You just never knew when to ask." That's when I realized this wasn't just about money. This was about rewriting history, about him standing in a courtroom and finally saying out loud what he'd always believed, that everything I built was temporary, that eventually it would circle back to him, that I was just holding it for him until he decided to take it. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly. My lawyer leaned toward me and whispered, "Are you ready?" I swallowed, because the truth was, my brother had no idea how close he was to the edge of something he couldn't undo, and the judge hadn't even seen the first document yet.
The courtroom felt smaller once my brother finished talking, like the walls had leaned in a few inches, curious, waiting. The judge nodded once, slow and deliberate, then looked down at the file in front of him. He flipped a page, then another. His face didn't change, but the silence stretched just long enough to make my brother shift in his seat. "Counsel," the judge said, turning to my lawyer, "you may proceed." My lawyer stood, calm, almost gentle, the kind of calm that comes from knowing you're holding something sharp. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said. "Before we address ownership, I'd like to clarify something." She turned slightly, gesturing toward me without touching. My client did not disappear from her family. She was abandoned by them. My brother let out a quiet laugh, not loud enough to be disrespectful, just enough to signal disbelief. The judge looked at him. "Mister, you'll have your turn." The laugh died instantly. My lawyer continued. "For 5 consecutive years, my client received no contact from her parents or her brother. No calls, no visits, no financial support, not even acknowledgement of major life events." She paused. "Including hospitalization." That did it. My brother's head snapped toward me so fast it was almost violent. "What?" he whispered. I didn't look at him. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Hospitalization?" "Yes, Your Honor," my lawyer said evenly. "There are records." She handed a folder to the clerk, who passed it forward. My brother leaned toward his attorney, whispering urgently. I caught fragments. "Never told. This is new. She's exaggerating." The judge flipped through the documents. Meanwhile, my mother and father walked in. Late. Of course they were late. I felt them before I saw them, that familiar pressure at the back of my neck, that instinctive tightening I hadn't felt in years, but my body remembered anyway. My mother's heels clicked nervously. My father's shoulders were stiff, like he was bracing for impact. They slid into the back row, whispering to each other, eyes darting everywhere except toward me. Except my mother couldn't help herself. She looked. Our eyes met for half a second. She flinched. I didn't. The judge cleared his throat. "We'll note the parents' arrival for the record." My brother straightened immediately, confidence flickering back into place like a switch had been flipped. "Your Honor," he said, standing again, "with all due respect, this is turning emotional. The core issue remains, those assets should have stayed within the family." The judge looked up slowly. "They did," he said. The room froze. My brother blinked. "I'm sorry?" The judge tapped the file. "Your sister is the family." Something shifted then, not loud, not dramatic, but real. My brother opened his mouth, then closed it. My lawyer took a step forward. "To address the claim of implied entitlement, we'd like to submit Exhibit B." Another folder. Thicker. "These are incorporation documents, Your Honor. The company that generated the income used to purchase the yacht and the penthouse was solely formed by my client. No family funds, no shared accounts, no inheritance, no gifts." My brother shook his head. "That's not possible." The judge looked at him again. "Do you have evidence to the contrary?" My brother hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. He turned toward our parents, like a child looking for backup. My father finally stood. "Yes," he said, rough. We always planned to help her." Planned. The word hung there, useless. The judge folded his hands. "Did you?" My father swallowed. Not directly. My mother spoke up quickly. She didn't ask. My lawyer didn't even react. She simply said, "May I?" The judge nodded. She turned to my parents. "In the 5 years you had no contact with your daughter, did you once attempt to verify her well-being?" My mother hesitated. My father stared at the floor. "No," my mother said finally. "And during those same 5 years, did you provide financial assistance to your son?" My brother stiffened. My father answered quietly, "Yes." "How much?" A pause, then a number that made murmurs ripple through the room. My brother shot to his feet. "That's irrelevant." The judge's voice cut through him. "Sit down." He did, but the damage was already spreading. My lawyer turned another page. "To one final clarification," she said, "Mr. has claimed the yacht and penthouse were meant for him." She looked directly at my brother now. "Can you tell the court when you first learned they existed?" He opened his mouth, then stopped, because the answer was sitting in his pocket. A social media post, posted by my aunt, less than 6 months ago. The judge watched him carefully. "Well?" he asked. My brother's jaw tightened, and in that moment I saw it, the fear, because he finally understood this wasn't about inheritance, it was about exposure, and the judge was just getting started.
My brother didn't answer the judge right away. He stood there, hands clenched at his sides, jaw working like he was chewing through something bitter. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, until even the court reporter paused, fingers hovering above the keys. "I don't remember the exact date," he said finally. The judge leaned back slightly. "You don't remember when you first learned of assets you now claim were intended for you?" My brother's lawyer shifted beside him. Too late. "I was aware she was doing okay," my brother said. "I didn't know the scale." The judge nodded once. "So you did not know about the yacht and penthouse until recently?" My brother hesitated again, this time longer. "No," he said. The word echoed louder than it should have. My lawyer didn't move. She didn't smile. She simply reached into her folder and slid one more document forward, like she'd been waiting her entire career for this exact moment. "Your Honor," she said, "we'd like to call our next witness." The judge glanced down. "Ms. Yes," my lawyer said. "The witness is already present." I felt it before I saw it. My aunt stood up in the back row. She wasn't dressed like she was trying to impress anyone. Simple blazer, sensible shoes, her hair pulled back tight, like she didn't want a single strand getting in the way of the truth. My mother inhaled sharply when she saw her. My father's shoulders sagged. My brother turned fully around this time, eyes wide. "What is she doing here?" he hissed. My aunt walked forward without looking at him. She raised her hand, swore in, sat down. The judge adjusted his glasses. "State your name for the record." She did. "And your relation to the parties involved?" "I'm their aunt," she said. "His sister, her aunt." She didn't say my parents' names. She didn't need to. My lawyer approached gently. "Can you tell the court why you posted the photograph that brought these assets to public attention?" My aunt smiled faintly. "Because I was proud." That was it. Just that. The judge tilted his head. "Proud of what, exactly?" "Of her surviving," my aunt said, nodding toward me. "Of her building something with no help from the people who should have helped first." My brother's lawyer stood quickly. "Objection. Opinion." "Overruled," the judge said. "She may answer." My aunt continued. "I checked on her once a year, sometimes twice. No one else did. I knew she was working. I knew she was exhausted. I didn't know the details because she didn't brag. She didn't ask for permission either." She paused, then added, "That runs in the family. Just not everyone." My brother scoffed. "So you post one picture and suddenly you're an authority?" She turned to him slowly, calm, surgical. "No," she said. "I'm an authority because I was there when she wasn't invited to Thanksgiving, when she stopped being mentioned, when her name disappeared from conversations like it made people uncomfortable." My mother whispered, "That's not fair." My aunt didn't even look at her. My lawyer stepped in again. "Do you know whether my client received any financial support from her parents during the period in which she built her company?" My aunt laughed once, a short, humorless sound. Support? They didn't even know where she lived. That landed hard. The judge scribbled something down. My brother jumped to his feet again. This is turning into a character assassination. The judge looked up sharply. "Sit down." He did, but his face was red now, cracked. My lawyer wasn't finished. "Were you aware," she asked my aunt, "that my client was hospitalized during that period?" My aunt's jaw tightened. "I found out months later, from her, by accident." The judge looked up. "Why months later?" "Because she didn't want to bother anyone. She'd learned no one was coming." My mother made a sound then, not words, just a broken inhale. The judge closed the file in front of him slowly, deliberately. Then he looked at my brother. "Mister," he said, "you claimed these assets were intended for you." "Yes," my brother said quickly, "because family property—" "Tell me," the judge interrupted, "when was the last time you spoke to your sister before the photograph was posted?" My brother opened his mouth, closed it, looked at our parents. They didn't help him. "I don't remember," he said. The judge's voice was quiet now, dangerous quiet. "Would it refresh your memory if I said 5 years?" My brother swallowed. "I was busy. Life happens." The judge leaned forward. "Yes," he said, "it does." My lawyer stood once more. "Your Honor," she said, "we'd now like to submit Exhibit C." She turned the page. "Text message records, call logs, emails." She looked directly at my brother. "Every unanswered attempt." The screen behind us lit up. Dates, times, voicemails never opened. 5 years of silence, mapped out in black and white. The room went very still. My brother stared at the screen like it was speaking a language he didn't understand. And for the first time, he looked at me not like I was in his way, but like I was dangerous. Because the story he'd told himself was collapsing, and the judge hadn't even asked the question I knew was coming next.
The judge turned off the screen. The sudden darkness felt heavier than the images had, like the room needed a moment to breathe after seeing 5 years of silence laid out so cleanly it looked intentional. Then he looked at me, not harshly, not kindly either, just directly. "Miss," he said, "you've been very quiet." Every head turned, my brother's first, my parents' a half-second later. My mother's eyes were glassy now. My father's face had gone pale, like he'd aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. I stood. The floor felt unsteady beneath my feet, but my voice didn't shake when I spoke. That surprised me most. "I wasn't sure when it would be appropriate," I said. The judge nodded. "Now is appropriate." I took a breath. I didn't look at my brother at first. I looked at the judge, at the seal on the wall behind him, at the quiet authority of a room where people weren't allowed to interrupt or rewrite things mid-sentence. "I didn't plan to come here to explain my life," I said. "I came because someone tried to take it." A murmur moved through the room. My brother scoffed softly. "That's dramatic." The judge held up a finger. "Not another word," he said. "You'll have a chance later, if I allow it." My brother leaned back, jaw tight. I continued. "For 5 years, I didn't exist to my family," I said. "Not because I vanished, because no one looked." My mother whispered my name. I didn't turn. "I sent messages," I said. "I made calls.
I showed up to events I wasn't invited to and left quietly when it was clear I wasn't wanted. And then I stopped. The judge watched me closely. "What changed?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "That's the point." Silence. "I built my company because I had to. I lived in places I didn't feel safe. I worked until I didn't recognize myself. I was hospitalized once because my body finally quit before my brain did." My mother made a small, broken sound. The judge looked toward her. "Ma'am, you will remain silent." I swallowed. I didn't tell anyone because I'd already learned the answer. If I fell alone. I finally looked at my brother. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Until suddenly, what I built was interesting. That got him. He looked up sharply. "That's not fair." I smiled faintly. "It's accurate." My lawyer didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. The judge leaned forward. "Miss, did you ever promise these assets to your brother or your parents?" "No," I said. "Did you ever imply they were shared?" "No." "Did you ever receive funds from them that contributed to their purchase?" "No." The judge nodded slowly. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Why do you think your brother believes they belong to him?" The room held its breath. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth wasn't polite. Because the truth had weight. "Because," I said finally, "he's always been told everything eventually does." My brother stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly across the floor. "That's not—" "Sit," the judge said. He didn't. "I won't sit here and be painted like some villain," my brother snapped. "She benefited from our name, our connections, our upbringing." The judge's voice sharpened. "Mr. You are dangerously close to contempt." My brother pointed at me. "She wouldn't have survived without us." I met his eyes. "I didn't survive because of you. I survived despite you." The room felt electric. My father finally stood then, hands shaking. "We didn't know," he said desperately. "We thought she wanted space." The judge looked at him. "For 5 years?" My father had no answer. The judge exhaled slowly, then looked back at me. "One more question," he said. "When you saw your brother's filing, when you realized he was claiming ownership, what did you feel?" I thought about the night I got the paperwork, sitting alone, reading my own life described as a misunderstanding. I felt relieved. My brother frowned. "Relieved?" "Yes," I said, "because it confirmed something I'd suspected for a long time." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Which was?" "That they didn't miss me," I said. "They missed control." The judge leaned back, and for the first time since the hearing began, he didn't speak right away. He just looked at my brother, long enough for the certainty on his face to finally crack. Because whatever ruling was coming, it wasn't what he walked in expecting. And I knew, I could feel it in my bones, that the judge was about to ask for something my brother could never provide. The judge didn't look angry. That scared my brother more than anger ever could. He folded his hands on the bench and said calmly, "Mr. The court is not interested in family mythology. We are interested in facts." My brother swallowed. The judge continued, "You've claimed intent, you've claimed entitlement, but intent requires action, and entitlement requires contribution." He turned a page. "What this record shows," he said, "is silence." My brother's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, if I may." The judge raised a hand without looking at him. "You may not." That was when I knew it was over. Not just the case, the illusion. The judge looked directly at my brother. "You did not know about the yacht. You did not know about the penthouse. You did not know about the company. You did not know about your sister's life." Each sentence landed like a measured strike. "You knew nothing," the judge said, "until there was something to take." My brother shook his head. "That's not fair." The judge tilted his head slightly. "Fair has nothing to do with it." He turned to my parents. "You testified you planned to help your daughter." My mother nodded frantically. "We did. Time got away." The judge held her gaze. 5 years. She broke down then, quietly, hands covering her face. The judge didn't soften. He turned back to the file. "Miss," he said, looking at me again, "you asked the court for dismissal of your brother's claim and affirmation of sole ownership. Is that correct?" "Yes," I said. My voice didn't shake. He nodded. "Based on the evidence presented, this court finds no legal basis for Mr. X's claim." My brother stiffened. "The yacht," the judge continued, "is solely owned by Miss X." My brother's breath caught. "The penthouse," the judge said, "is solely owned by Miss X." My mother sobbed openly now. "And any future claim," the judge added, "attempting to assert implied family ownership over assets acquired independently will be viewed as frivolous." He looked directly at my brother. "Do you understand what that means?" My brother nodded slowly, face pale. "It means," the judge said, "this court will not be used to settle resentment." Silence filled the room. Then, just when I thought it was done, the judge said something unexpected. "This ruling does not repair what's broken. It only clarifies what belongs to whom." He looked at me one last time. "Miss X, you are free to go." That was it. No gavel slam, no dramatic flourish, just permission. I walked out of the courtroom alone. My brother didn't follow. My parents didn't call out. The hallway smelled like coffee and paper and relief I didn't know how to name yet. Outside, the sun was too bright, too normal for a day that had split my life cleanly in two. My phone buzzed once as I stood on the steps. A message. From my brother. I didn't think it would end like this. I stared at the screen, then locked my phone. Because for the first time in my life, nothing was being taken from me. And that night, back on the water, the yacht rocking gently beneath my feet, city lights blinking like distant stars, I realized something strange. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the moment everyone finally learned they didn't own it. If this story kept you hooked, if you felt that tension, that silence, that moment when everything turned, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who understands what it means to be underestimated, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because some stories don't end in court, they just begin there.